Building Bridges for America, a presentation of how to be politically active. My name is Kaz Margana. I'm coming to you from South Bend, Indiana, and I have a lot of experience of working on campaigns over the years, working for campaigns, working on part of the local Democratic Party. But I didn't do anything politically more. I barely voted before 2019. So I very much remember what it was like to not be active, not be politically active. I cared about stuff, but I didn't actually do anything beyond voting. So I remember what those first, kind of tentative steps in getting involved were like. And I wish I had a course like this to help me dive on in. So that's what we've done with Building Bridges is we kind of created these courses. We originally came out of Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign back in 2020, where we developed many of these courses. But yeah, now we've continued on and have been doing this, for many campaigns, many cycles now, and into 2026. And then Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Mumford, and I'm a retired lawyer. I spent my entire legal career, though, in and around government. And what I'm hoping to pass off to you all is some of that experience and also just my optimism about how to be effective when you're talking to your elected representatives. A little bit different from Kaz. I come from a family that was always involved in politics. So this is being involved and talking to people about politics is something that I've done my whole life. So I look forward to continuing that with you all.
Great. So when you are thinking about being politically active, there's many what I like to call swim lanes, many different channels, ways that you can get involved that are all swimming and working towards the same goal. But there's a lot of ways to be politically active. I think a lot of times people think about in terms of like elections and working for campaigns or working for a political party. And that is one of those swim lanes, but there are others. There's advocacy, so there's being an activist or an organizer. And then there's also the policy side, so helping inform our elected officials, being a watchdog of what is going on in those big white buildings, those big government buildings. So there's multiple ways that you can get involved, and there's different groups that are working towards that goal. So if you are looking for something like really short term, you want to jump in and help, that's a campaign. Campaigns usually run from 3 to 9 months. And then that's where their campaigns are always looking for volunteers. They're looking for fundraising. They tend to, there's very rigid structures for when you run for office. So there's a lot of rules. So they tend to be a little more cautious in how they go about. And then they're short term. But if you're looking to get involved in something more long term, so there's a bunch of grassroots groups out there. So Building Bridges is an example of a grassroots group. If there are grassroots groups out there, if you don't see one that speaks to you, we actually have a course of how to start your own group. And as Jenny, as I like to say, that a group is you and one other person. So that's where it gets started. So with grassroots, that's something that is happening all the time. It's not a short-term thing. You could do whatever you want, fast and loose. Doesn't have a lot of restrictions. Or you can get involved in a group that is very that's very set and standard. So you could get involved with a party. So you can get involved with the Democratic Party. They're about building out that infrastructure at all the different levels, from the national down to your county level. they're going to be much more cautious because again, they got a lot of rules on how to run a party, but that is another way that you can get involved year round. So again, when we're thinking about all the different ways that you can be politically active, the different swim lanes, you have options. You've got lots of different options. But no matter what you choose to pursue, everything that you choose to take part in, it all begins with you, yourself, that passion that you have in your heart to contribute. So we're going to talk today about using that and developing that voice that you have in you, and organizing yourself to be politically active. So that's the part I'm going to cover. And then Terry is then going to cover to be civically active. So take that voice and then use it to make real change. So for my part, we're going to teach you how to tell your story and listen to your network, actively listen, and then engage others to then join with you. So first of all, if you are waiting for somebody to give you permission to get started, to take action, I got good news for you. I am now giving you that permission. You have that permission right now. You are an organizer, and your job now is then to organize yourself, organize the people around you, and then to take that real action. So you're not waiting on anybody to give you that permission. You are giving yourself that permission to go out and get started today. So when we talk about being able to tell your story, what we mean is that you should be prepared to articulate why you care. And we're going to go step by step on how to really be able to articulate that. Because yeah, you might have a lot of passion in your heart, but then turning it into a succinct, couple of sentences when you want to go out and speak with people, that takes practice. So we are going to go through that practice right now. So first, I want you to think about what was the first political action you took beyond voting? So if anybody, we can unmute people if they want to share what their first political action that they took beyond voting.
Kaz, we've got some notes here. Terry said passing out literature. Rachel was saying she's excited about the guidebook. She was calling senators. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to be unmuted, just try raising your hand there. Eric did some phone banking. Thank you, Eric.
That's great.
The phone banking champions out there.
Yeah, my first step beyond voting is I went to a bar to watch for a watch party for a candidate that was launching a campaign. So that was my first thing. It's like my family thought I fell and hit my head. They thought I was crazy because we were not a political family whatsoever. And I said, no, I'm going to go watch this campaign launch on TV with a bunch of people at a bar at 10 a.m. But it was great, and it's launched me into doing all this other stuff now. So yeah, it's great to think about what that first thing was that you did that was beyond voting, because it helps to, when you're telling your story, it helps to show other people that haven't done a first thing beyond voting yet, and giving them those ideas of how to take that first step. So it's good to first take a minute, look in the mirror, and remember what you did. And that looking in the mirror and that reflection is really the important first step to taking action, is to first think about take a deep look at what your core values are, what is really motivating you, what drives you. And we're going to go through this step by step. And then to think of a time that you really felt that passion, and then to be able to share then how you see those values reflected in a group or a campaign or cause that you're passionate about, and then talking about why it's important to get involved now. So those are our 4 steps of self-reflection. We're going to walk through them step by step and piece them all together into your short sentence elevator pitch. So you are ready to talk and articulate your passion at any moment. So first of all, we're going to talk about values. You hear that a lot about, what are your values? But what really does that mean? Like, what really are our values? And so a value is something that you value. It is something that is important to you. But then to narrow that down, values aren't our morals. Values aren't what we consider things to be right or wrong. And values aren't a specific issue or policy. So we're going to do a little dig down on exactly how to find the values underneath the issues and policies that we may care about. And so values are things that we share. We may not interpret the word, that feeling, in the exact same way, but the gut feeling is the same. An example of that is freedom. So the word freedom, that feeling of freedom, people might interpret it in different ways, but when we say the word freedom, in our gut, we have that same feeling. So those are our value words. So again, we kind of want to dig down past the issue. So if we take an issue like economic inequality, I would hope that the issue of economic inequality is something that is important to you, but that is not a value. Or if we talk about a policy, like a policy of like fighting to raise the minimum wage, again, I hope that that policy is something that's important to you, but that's not a value. Value is underneath there, digging down past economic inequality, past raising a minimum wage, to get to the values, those words that are underneath there. So like I said, you take the issue of economic inequality and you dig down and you ask yourself, how does that issue make me feel? And then dig down even further and ask yourself, why do I feel that way? So maybe that when I think about economic insecurity, I think to myself that it's just not fair. Well, why do I feel that? Well, because in my gut, like justice and equity are very important values to me. Maybe when I think about economic inequality, I think that I get so frustrated that it's just not fair that people don't get a chance. Not everybody has a chance. So if I dig down, why is that important to me? Because I think resilience is an important value. So everybody has a different reason, why they are driven towards, seeing these issues as important and finding out that why. And you want to be able to find it for yourself, right? It's just like, you don't want to just, copy what somebody else says. You want to find it truly for yourself. That way, when you're speaking from a very authentic place. And there's a whole lot of value words out there. This is just a small little smattering of value words that are out there. I like to call values and saying these words, I like to call them nod along words, in that these are things that we all share, no matter where we're coming from. If I say that, success is something that's important to me, or friendship is something that is important to me, no matter where you're coming from, you're going to feel that too, right? So people are going to nod along. And this is where it's great when you're trying to make connections with people, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what the walk of life they are in. If we can find and we can speak to things right off the bat that we're all going to agree on, that's going to get people nodding along and paying attention. So that's why it's good that we start with these value words and just say them out loud. A lot of times we let them just be the subtext. It's like, no, you've got to say this aloud. And then that way people will hear you, they'll understand you, they'll agree with you. And it's a good way to make that first initial connection. And a couple little more tips before we get into crafting our why and why things are important to us is, again, talking about that common language. If we want to connect with people right away, right? We want to make that first initial connection. And then there's a couple things you want to avoid. is the things that we might not have in common. And one of the things you might not have in common with people is how you interpret facts, right? Our brains are all wired in different ways. So if you start off your conversation by using facts, people might not be interpreting the same way as you, so you might already be creating a disconnect. Also, logic. Again, our brains are all different, so we're not all going to see logic the same way. And even senses of morality, right? So if you want to expand your voice and who you're talking to, people might have different senses of morality, right and wrong, than what you have. So when you start talking, you don't want to be talking about these things that could be creating differences between you and the person that you're talking to. You want to start with things that no matter who you're talking to, they're going to be using that common language and they're going to understand you. So again, that's talking about those value words, not long words. And then your personal story, right? Your personal story. No one can tell you what's right or wrong. It's your personal story. So if you're sharing that, then again, people are going to listen and they're going to be more likely to understand. So let's dive into a straight up script. So really just help you along. We have a workbook that goes along with this course that walks you through a lot of this step by step, because this is stuff that you need to, do a little homework ahead of time and sit down and practice. So, but this is a script that is a good way to get yourself used to talking about things that are important to you, to sharing that story. So first thing is to use that emotion. What are you feeling, right? Share that emotion. People will recognize, and feel that emotion along with you. So say it, say our feelings around aloud. I know Democrats are not very good. Progressives are not very good at the heart space. We're very good at the brain space, but not very good at opening up and sharing those feelings. So start it off, just get used to it. Start off by saying how you feel, and then say about that value. So you can say that I feel fed up right now, or you can say I feel very energized right now. And then share that value. So I feel, very, very fed up right now because, peace is important to me, and our president just got ourselves into a war, right? So those are so again, starting with that emotion, and then going to a core value, and then that time that you felt that value. Right. So that's that story time, is thinking about something that is going on right now that is really challenging to those core values. And then is what I call the turn, where you're going from speaking about yourself and something is going on that's affecting you, and then making that turn to, and that is why I am taking an action that I am taking. So, and that is why I signed up for this organizing course tonight. That is why I'm going to, our local Democratic meetup this Saturday. Right. So say, and that is why, the thing that you're doing and then the action that you are taking, and then get used to inviting others to join you. So will you join me? So get used to making that ask as part of your script. And then what you want to do is you want to go through and you want to organize your network. You want to think about the people that you know, and people in your life, people around you, and make a plan to talk to people, make a plan to reach out to them. And then if, depending on how they respond, to reach out to them again. So this is using your voice to organize, and first organizing yourself. We have this in the workbook that helps you make that first list of the people that you know. Start with those easy ones, the people that are, that are already kind of active. At least that they vote, and then challenge yourself for the people that you've never actually spoken politics to before. Because when the way that you are crafting your words is so you can reach out to anybody, not just politically active people, not just to people that are going to politically agree with you, but a way that you can reach out to everybody. And also be making a list, being organized, and making a list. This is data. This is what drives all political power is being organized. So having that voice, but then having that list of people that you can reach out to, that is your political power. So if you can be organized with that, whether or not you're just writing it down on a piece of paper, if you're a nerd like me and you love your spreadsheets, or there's different apps and stuff out there that campaigns and stuff might use that you can record who you're talking to and what their reaction is to what you're saying. And when you come up, so now you're ready to go out and speak to people. So you've got your list of people, you're ready to go out and talk to people. That could be really like scary, right? Is like, especially if you've never spoken or talked politics with people before. But the good news is you're not going to actually do a lot of the talking. You have that script ready to go, but it's in your back pocket. And you actually want to be the one to first start conversations and listen, hand the microphone over to the other people and actively listen. So we're going to talk about those skills, about how to do that, how to be an active listener. First of all, when you go into those conversations, you want to be thinking that you are going to be having a dialogue with the other person you're talking to. So there's different ways to have a conversation. There's what most people think of when they think of talking politics. They think in terms of debate, because that's what they know of politics, is the presidential debates. We are not asking you to go out and debate anybody, not at all. This is a completely different way of having a conversation. The other way that people think of talking politics is in terms of a discussion. This is when you see the two talking heads on TV, on like CNN, the two talking heads talking at each other. You know, they each say their side and say their piece, and then they go to different sides. That's not what we're doing either. We want to have a dialogue, and a dialogue means that you go into the conversation being open-minded. I like to say you want to go into the conversation wanting to understand more than you want to be understood. And that is actually going to make it so people will be listening to you and more likely to open up and listen and understand what you're saying as well. So you want to go in focusing on listening and asking good questions. So a light opener to start a conversation. Again, you have your whole script in your back pocket, right? You're ready to go when it's time to share what's important to you. You're going to have that ready to go. But to start that conversation, how do you get that started? So you can start, there's a couple ways you can do it. Just a really light opener of just starting with a personal fact. I mean, you got one right now, is I signed up for this organizing class because I feel like I need to do more than vote in 2026. So have you thought about voting this year? So just ask really, you say a personal fact about yourself, and then you can go right into just handing the microphone over to them with a very light question. So have you thought about voting this year? Very easy. Or maybe you can talk about a news item. So you can say how, the war in Iran just feels really reckless. And it's very scary right now. What do you think about the war, right? Hand the microphone over to them. So if you want to open with a news item. So in both those cases, you're going to hand that microphone over, and then you're going to just listen. So there's something that is, so active listening means just staying open and listening, and then fighting your instinct to either push back or defend. If someone comes at you, responds in a way that is more aggressive, pushing back on you, then you have to fight that instinct to push back and instead just absorb that, and then just ask them, no matter what they say. Just be curious, be open, and then say, tell me more about that. Get them speaking a little bit more. So this is what we have our active listening guide 4 is, again, this is in the workbook. This is a lot to go through in a course, so that's why it's in the workbook. All these different ways to get into the habit of being a good, active listener. I mean, the first thing, very obvious, is to avoid distraction, to give that person your attention. So don't have your phone out, don't have a dog jumping all over you, right? Where you're really giving that person their attention. Another one is, as they're speaking, is to reflect and then paraphrase it back to them. So saying things like, it sounds to me like you're saying, and kind of summarizing it. That makes people really feel that you are listening. There's little things, there's little words that you could say along the way where you're like nodding, or you say, just little words like that let people know that you're listening. Those are all really good active listening tools. So this guide is in the workbook, and it is just a good way to keep referring back to it, to build up those good habits, to get people to open up and talk to you. So once you feel like that person is engaged, like you've asked them about themselves, how they're feeling, they've shared a little bit about themselves, you're starting to understand where they're coming from. That is where you can then take the microphone back and engage with them, and then say your prepared thing. So, I feel fed up because leadership is important to me, and we need to restore sanity and have leaders who work for the people, not for billionaires. And that is why I will vote for Democrats all the way up and down the ballot in 2026. And this Saturday, I'm going to a Democratic meetup. Will you come with me? So again, these are, you come up with your own your own script. You can have multiple ones, right? We have all different feelings and different values. So you can have multiple ones. But this is a good primer for, again, getting people to listen, to understand where you're coming from, and then making that turn over into the action that you're now taking. And then a couple last things before we get into the civic side of this is, if you're afraid of encountering tension when you talk politics, if you're afraid of that someone's going to push back on you, again, fight that instinct to defend. If people respond with talking points, right? They sound like talking points right out of the White House or right out of Fox News. Say, I think I've heard that before, but tell me more. Tell me what you think about that, right? You want them thinking and feeling for themselves. This is something a lot of people don't get a chance to do. So, it might be their first time that they're actually really thinking and feeling for themselves. So give them that space where they feel safe in order to do that. And also, always give yourself permission to walk away. If you're talking with people that if you think that this conversation might kind of jeopardize your relationship with that person, it's just politics. It's like there are other things in that relationship with the person that's more important. So just give yourself that permission to walk away. You brought it up. You can also change the subject and walk away. But then also at the same time, you want to limit the amount of time that you are talking politics with people, because politics is just a natural, normal part of our lives. So I like to limit any political talk to 20 minutes at the time. So even if you're talking to somebody and it's the best conversation you've ever had, you have so many things that political things that you're fired up about. After 20 minutes, change the subject to something else that you and that person have in common. Because again, politics, just a natural, normal thing. So you just want to just be touching this over time. Or if you're talking to somebody and they're not really receptive to it, just know that, sometimes it works that you just have to just plant a seed or even just till some soil before over time that person will start to engage in political talk. And then finally, when you're having those conversations with people, when you're starting to see where people are at politically, if you could write that down, write down who they are, what they, where they're at politically. Again, this is your data. This is stuff that you can then bring to a campaign, bring to a grassroots. It's just going to help you kind of be organized in knowing who's out there, who are your partners out there that you can count on, and then yeah, you can either share this information, share the people that might be interested in taking political action, share that with groups, with your party, seat party, and stuff. So again, this is then what forms your political power. All right, so you've got that for yourself. You know how to talk. You're ready to articulate why you care. You're ready to then go out, talk with people, hand them the mic. But now it's like, what do you do with that? How do you then affect change with your voice? And that's where we're going to turn it over to Terry.
That was great. I have been very fortunate to hear Kaz's presentation several times, and I'm always just really impressed with the messages that I take away, and how helpful it's been to me. We're doing Civics for Change now, and we're changing our focus. Kaz was focusing on talking to colleagues, friends, family, and being persuasive in that orbit. I am now going to talk about using some of those very same points, but talking about how you can have an impact on policymakers. So we're going to be talking about how you can effectively reach out to your policymakers. And policymakers is just the generic term that I've used for, when you want to say something to your mayor, to your city councilor, up the line to your representative, your senator. So that's what we're going to be. That's the direction we're going to be looking right now. And what is so interesting to me, since I'm someone who was raised in a family of politicians who think that, yeah, of course, if I have a point of view, I need to let, elected people know what my point of view is. I have found out that I am in the minority. And so when we've been done this presentation in the past, I did some research as to why don't people reach out to policymakers to express their opinion. So we had the results of a survey that had been done by, I don't know, it was a newspaper or whatever. And then also we had the comments in the chat from people who attended this seminar before. And these are the reasons and that is that the first one was I found so interesting is that people don't reach out to the mayor or whatever because they don't know that they can. And it goes back to one of Kaz's slides of they don't know that they have that permission. Well, yes, you do. And we're hoping that by some of the things we're pointing out here, you'll be more effective when you do reach out to them. The other reason that folks don't reach out to their policymakers is that they know there's a problem. They feel there's a problem, but they're not exactly sure what the source of the problem is, or who they should contact, or how do you reach the right person? And then they're concerned that they don't know what to say, or they think it doesn't matter. And people have been persuaded that their views don't matter, and that's actually not correct. As this quote from Alice Walker says, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any, and you do. And also people are worried, well, there's so many issues that they're concerned about, and how are they going to deal with them all? And this next quote is, I hope, reassuring. This one from Glennon Doyle says, the secret is not to allow the fact that you can't do everything keep you from doing something. Do something, then rest. Do something, then rest. And that's what we're going to continue to follow up on in this part of the presentation. And this presentation, I think, will be relevant to anybody who is a volunteer. And some of you on the call, although I think some of you are getting started, some of you might be like Kaz and Jenny, super volunteers, people who are, really a resource for a campaign. They're the leader of other volunteers. But most of us would be just a volunteer, who are so important. And I saw in the earlier comments that as you all have done phone banking and you have done postcarding and you might have done lit dropping, which I've done, or my favorite thing, sitting at a table and talking to people. And all of us, though, can become a trusted voice. We can help our friends and family and colleagues know how to take the next step that we're learning here. And we're all concerned citizens, and we're going to be good communicators with our policymakers. So we're going to get started with the governmental cheat sheet. And this is also in your handbook. And this is the first step when you're going to identify this word jurisdiction. And that's where we're going to figure out who it is that we should be talking to, because we're going to figure out if the problem we have is a statewide level, we're going to talk to state officials. If the problem is a city level, we're going to talk to city level officials. And we're going to fill out this cheat sheet that's in our handbook. That's a couple of slides down there that we'll see. And so we're going to start easy. We all know what state we're in. Then we're going to fill in our county, our city, our school district. And if we're looking at some other bigger issue, or some more focused issues rather, we might have to talk about, are we in a particular special service district? So if you're working with a group, you start there and then you go to step 2 and you start filling in the people you're going to talk to. And this one is one that, just as Kaz advised you, keep that active listening guide next to you. After you have filled out these 2 cheat sheets, keep them with you when you're, if you see a news article and you say, I need to write to someone about that. I need to make my views known. This cheat sheet will help you, because you'll fill in your 2 U.S. senators, your 1 U.S. representative, the one that represents you. You'll fill in the governor, your state senator, your state representative, your mayor, the county officials, your city officials, and on down. In some cases, your focus is going to be very local, like your school board, and you are going to fill in who is the school board member. Because even though these national issues are just occupying a lot of the space in the news, we want to be able to use our voice at the local level. So, and we might want to consider even more jurisdictions in 2026 and beyond at the state level. If there are the Secretary of State, who is in charge of elections in most states, we may want to write them. I mean, they're there. The treasurer, perhaps the attorney general. Some states have a CFO. And at the local level, we need to be aware of what the judges are doing. If there are perhaps in elections, a township trustee or an advisory board. But what we are really saying here is in order to be credible, before we begin expressing our opinion to an elected person, we need to make sure we have the correct information. We need to make sure that we know that we are writing or leaving a message for or emailing the correct person who has authority, jurisdiction over the issue. And if you are a trusted advisor, you may be helping your friends and family figure out how they would fill out that cheat sheet. I'm retired, so fortunately I have time to do activities with my friends, be in a swimming group or a gardening group. And just in the most casual of conversations, they will now ask me, or if they'll tell me, well, I'm worried about this particular issue, who should I write? And fortunately, because I have done this, done this work, done this research, I can often tell them who it is, or I can tell them how to find out who they should write. So then our next step is going to be focusing on the issue. What is the issue that we are concerned about? So in the worksheet, in the workbook, there's a worksheet where you identify your issue. Now, identify your issue is a little bit more than just saying, I have an issue, I'm concerned about voting. It is to say, how do you want to describe that issue? What is, if you were going to just write about that issue in one short sentence, what would you say is the problem, or what is the goal? And this is where a lot of the work that Kaz just had you go through is going to be very helpful, because you want to talk about this issue in your terms. You want to be able to explain why it's important to you. You want to talk about it positively, not Pollyanna positive, but what is the goal? What are you trying to get at? And what you want to do is to avoid, in that regard, you want to avoid what the opposition is saying, and you want to avoid it because you don't want to reinforce what they're saying. So there is a sheet in the workbook. We talk about issue identification, and what we're wanting to do here is to come up with a couple of really important issues that perhaps at the local level, at the state level, maybe at the federal level, because you really cannot be all things to all people. After the 2016 election, I read a really helpful article, I think it was in Psychology Today, that said there's too much going on. To save your sanity and to be effective, pick 2 issues that you want to really get in depth on, and follow those through. One of the additional helpful things in step 3 of the workbook is that after you've identified your issue, then figure out, are there organizations that are working on those issues that you can follow, and you can use their information. You can sometimes use their wording to help you express your point of view. And then the final point on this sheet is, again, try to develop a list or the terms that you are going to use consistently and positively to describe your issue. Just as Kaz said, you have your speech in your back pocket. You want to reinforce in your writing and your communications a consistent and positive message when it comes to your issues. So our next step is to tie what we've learned together, tie it all together, and it's in the workbook. You plan your advocacy, and by that, we plan who we want to talk to about what and where. And so in this process, you can be doing this yourself, or you can be doing it in a group. And so the next page in your worksheet is just blank, but it's to give you that outline to fill in, to start with, who's in charge, meaning who are you going to write to, who are you going to call, who are you going to email, and then what are you going to say about your issue. And as we mentioned here, similar to something Kaz said, what is it that we all could agree on with regard to this problem? And then what is my message? What is it that I want to say? And I think sometimes we are so worried that we're not saying what what the party wants us to say, or what some progressive group wants us to say. But what will have an impact is when you are saying what is important to you. And then the final part that's on this step is for you to figure out where you're going to deliver your message. How are you going to get this message to the right person. And so, yeah, we're going to go quickly over the next slides because it's like what we just talked about. Who's in charge using your governmental cheat sheet, how you're going to identify, frame, and formulate the issue. If you are that super volunteer working at the organizational level, you might be tasked with developing position papers, and you're going to be compiling information, working with other organizations. The rest of us will not be at that level. We will be instead working on the direct message. We'll be explaining why we are concerned about whatever this problem is. Is the issue good roads, fair health care, better schools, women's rights? And note there that when we're identifying the issue, we are using positive terms. And then we are framing the issue around our values, that I'm a hard worker. That's why I'm concerned about wages, or I'm concerned about my family. And then you want to state how you are affected personally. And there's no way, I think, to underestimate how important that personal explanation is, and then tie that into a specific request for action. And as we continue to make our views known, we want to consider options for how we would address these issues. We want to perhaps share brief policy statements. If we're at the organizational level, we may be actually making personal appointments to talk to policymakers, or we may be training others, as we are here tonight, on how to make those contacts. But within all of those, if we are guiding others, we are reminding them to be positive and specific and make sure they are contacting the right person. We're going to sail through a couple of slides here because we want to remind ourselves that when we're using Civics for Change, we have to be present, positive, and repetitive. Policymakers have to hear from their constituents. We want to make sure we are talking to the policymakers who represent us. And we want to make sure that policymakers only hear from we want to hear multiple points of view. We want them to hear our points of view. And there's one of the points here that I really care about, and that is, people will say, the facts speak for themselves. That's just not true. We speak for the facts. We explain the why. And we want to make sure that we get to the why, and the why is about us. And so beyond our direct contacts, we can actually reach out to reporters. If you might be surprised how much a reporter would value a person on the street comment about an issue. So if you're reading a local paper and you see a byline in there, send an email to that reporter and say, I have a story that is important that you need to add to your understanding of this issue. You can also write op-eds for local papers. You can organize a Facebook or social media group. But our goal here is to provide a sustained flow of information, because one contact, one statement is just never enough. So let's talk about some of what are the always rules. What do you do in every communication with a policymaker, whether it's in person, on the phone, in the letter? It's obvious. What's your name? Where do you live? Identifying that you are a constituent. And then, is there another point of contact? I have supported you. I was at your fundraiser, whatever it was. Mention any point of contact, or it could be, my mother knew your mother. That's actually always a very good one. Tell them what action you want them to take, and then what are the 3 things that you want to say about this? Now, if you're old enough, you will remember what a topic sentence is. And that is such an important thing. Do not bury the lead, as they say. When you start to talk about something, say your most important thing first. And then talk about the personal impact, summarize and restate your question or your request rather, and then be grateful for their attention and say thank you. And then there are some things never to say. Never say, I will never vote for you. If you will never vote for the person, they don't need to listen to you. Do not insult them. These are some more of the creative ones. And don't give them the out. Don't say you don't care about people like me, because then all they have to do is agree with you and they don't care about people like you. So those are things, that's in the more humorous vein, but really, as someone who used to read letters that are written by constituents to the governor of my state, these things are in there. And as a staff person, we just sorted those to a different pile. So here are some other, on a serious note, here are some never say things. And this, a couple of these are from George Lakoff and one's from Barack Obama. But George Lakoff says, when you are arguing against the other side, do not use their language. And then he says, when you repeat a lie, even to debunk it, you help strengthen it. So don't fall into that trap. And Barack Obama says, don't start with a slogan, start with what is true. And that's and so do that. Do that. Do not be tempted to get into those arguments. When you write or call or talk, you get to pick whether, if you want to be at that national level, the state level, or the local level. You get to pick your issue, and you do not need to feel that you have to hit a federal issue. If the thing that is bugging you the most is wetlands protection, you do wetlands protection and trust that someone else will find one of these other issues the most important. So we have just a few more minutes left. Let's just sail through how I might create a strategy on immigration. And immigration, since it is primarily a federal level, but also has some state and local, I would start with my 2 U.S. senators and my U.S. representative. If there's a state legislation issue, which there was in Indiana this year, I would write to my state representative and my state senator and my governor, because he would have a chance to veto something. And I would refer to my cheat sheet. And in terms of the content, I would follow the rules. I would start with my name, address, with my 3 points. Again, because science tells us that the human brain can absorb 3 points repeated 3 times. That's it. That's all you got. And then have my personal story, my request for action, and then I should figure out how I'm going to deliver my request. And so I might have I might consider social media, but I'm going to first get my message right. And then I might say, oh, this is what I just sent to my state rep. If there's some more tips, if I'm asked to use a form letter, I will use it, but I will certainly modify it if I can, and add that personal story. Signing a petition is generally not enough. And I would say communicate with those who support you and those who don't. Don't leave your state representative who supports you just out there on a limb. Send him a letter saying, thank you for everything, and follow the same approach in written and verbal communications. We're getting near the end, so I will tell you that in the slides, there's some sample letters of how I might write to my U.S. senator and representative, and then some resources on immigration and reproductive rights, gun safety. And then I do just want to mention this real briefly. I got actually a minute, and that is really consider writing an op-ed or a letter to the editor. Papers want this. They really value them. And in our slides are some tips on how to write that. Limit yourself to no more than 300 words. Mention the elected persons in there. And now we have a lovely summary side on spend your time on issue identification, spend your time determining who's in charge, in preparing your message, stay positive, and then be creative in the outlets where you get your message out. And now we go to the end. Amanda Gorman. So thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Terry. That was great.
Thank you.
We had some nice dialogue in the chat. People are getting excited. So that's good to hear. And I just wanted to note next week, I put some links in the chat. We're doing the full civics course that Terry will be doing. And then the week after that we're back with grassroots and precinct organizing. So we've combined our precinct leaders, which is kind of your local leaders, and forming your own grassroots organization and how to share those resources together into one presentation. So this is just the beginning. We took a hiatus in 25 after the election. And so we are ready to get started again for those midterm elections coming up. So keep an eye out. The whole catalog is posted and all the meeting links are available. So, all right.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for paying attention. And I hope you found this to be helpful.
Yeah, we hope to see you again.
See you later.